Hey there, this is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority from my new office here in Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, 317 Jerry Street. I love my new office. It's so good to be back in an office again, and I'm making lots of videos and lots of connections, and really looking forward to being able to help you. So this video today is about your brain. This is in particular targeted towards people that are having some brain issues, let's say Alzheimer's, dementia. And let me tell you one thing about Alzheimer's, right? All that $1 billion of research that then turned into these medications going after the plaques, it was all a lie. It was a fraud, and it was proven to be a fraud. The guy that based the testing or the all of the studies on that all of the medications were based upon was proven to be a fraud. He faked it all. And yet the medications are still going after these amyloid plaques. And that's wrong. What we now know is that's why it's now being called type 3 diabetes. It's really the sugars, or what's called advanced glycation agents. Your brain turns into hardened sugared candy because you're rock candy, because you've been eating too much sugar, because so many people are pre-diabetic. There's not enough blood flow in the brain. So what do we do about this? Now, we can have people that are subclinical to this, which is, I got brain fog all the time. I get, what's that word? You notice I say sometimes, and I'm getting better and better. That's one of the things is what am I looking for with that word? What is your name again? These are signs, or this song gets stuck in my head, or I can't sleep very well. I've got insomnia, all these different things. Now, that can be related to breathing issues like sleep apnea, blah, blah, blah. That's all kinds of other stuff. However, we do know that it's related to the function of the brain. And that's a problem because there's many things that do not cross the blood-brain barrier, right? But we do know there are things that do cross the blood-brain barrier. There are some spectacular supplements, and there's a spectacular stack that I'm going to go over with you that is absolutely been verified by all kinds of testing, mice testing, as well as human testing. But the other thing is people that have been doing this really will tell you, I notice a big difference. And pretty quickly, in a matter of weeks to a month, they start to see the difference, right? So let's go over a couple of them. One, this is called Circuzyme. So Circuzyme is used in particular to increase microcirculation, right? So one of the big things that works in this is diosmin, which is a citrus horse diosmin, L-carnitine, which is used for muscles, but it helps to deliver into the cellular structure, right? Hesperidin, okay? This is what diosmin and hesperidin is what comes from blood oranges in Italy. And in fact, this formula, a very similar formula, has been used a long time in Italy. It's a supplement / medication that's been used a lot for blood flow issues, brain issues, but blood flow throughout the whole body, especially microcirculation. But the real big kicker of this one is it has nattokinase. Nattokinase comes from fermented soybean, what they call natto, right? But nattokinase is one of these things that breaks up fibrinogen. It breaks up fibrin deposits. So one of the reasons why this is used for is it helps with blood clotting. So people that are at risk of blood clotting in the body, but in particular blood clots that form in the brain, because what really blood clots are is individual blood cells that get stuck together and then form too big of a glob to go through the tiny blood vessels, and now you got a blockage, and now you get an aneurysm, or you got a brain bleed, or you get, because it can burst, right? So keeping the blood thin, hesperidin is really good for that, diosmin, without over thinning it. So it's not like a baby aspirin or any of these other thinners that you got to watch because you can thin too much. But it breaks up fibrin clots, in particular in the brain. So it's very helpful for that. So that's part of the stack, is taking the Circuzyme. The other thing is this stuff called Cognotropic. Cognotropic, which is very important of what's called increasing what's called BDNF, brain-derived nutrient factor, right? And so one of the things that this is really good, so this has choline in it. Choline, this is coming from grapes. Choline is also very high in eggs, in particular chicken egg yolks. choline, see, chicken egg yolks are this perfect food, the baby mama. So we as humans, our babies are in our belly connected to the umbilical cord because mama's eating and it's feeding the baby everything, growing the baby inside her body. Well, reptiles and birds and stuff that lay eggs, it takes that baby and puts it outside of the body. So it's not going to be able to feed anything. But what it does is it creates a yolk. And in fact, when you notice we're hatching little baby chickens and ducks and things like that, when they break out of their shell, oftentimes you can see the yolk sac is connected to their umbilical cord. So they have a food source that is a most perfect, since the mama can't be with them, and the mama gives itself, its body. So everything's super perfect. And one of the great things about choline is choline helps to feed the brain. Another thing of choline is what's called acetylcholine. And this helps to actually get products into the brain. And in particular, it helps to get fat into there's a connection between the liver, gallbladder, and the brain, because when we eat fats, the bile that is held in the gallbladder, secreted by the liver, gets squirted into the digestive system. That gets mixed with the fat. So big fat globules turn into tiny little fat globules, and especially can get to the brain. So we need something to thin the bile and thin the fat so that and deliver the fat. So choline in particular helps to deliver fat to the brain. Now, this other thing that it has is got rosemary leaf, this neural factor, which is a whole coffee fruit. This is spearmint extract and rosmaric acid. All of that being said, these help to produce what's called BDNF, which has been the holy grail of the brain, which is, again, BDF is a measure of growing new brain cells. And again, if we've had dead brain cells, and that's part of dementia, Alzheimer's, even, forgetting the words and stuff is a sign that you damaged brain cells. Doing too many drugs, doing too much alcohol, having sleep apnea, not breathing very well, having very tight chest, very shallow breathing. All of these things go towards destroying your brain. Brain cells dying. Well, what we learned in the past, which is you can't create new brain cells, is all lie too. You can recreate new cells. We're recreating new cells all the time. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. That's not true. They can actually, you give it the right nutrition, you give it the right what's the word I'm looking for? I need some of this. The right action, it will build that, right? It's a muscle. Muscle gets old and weak. Just exercise it and we rebuild, right? So that's another thing. So that's part of the stack, is taking these. The other thing, this is lion's mane. Lion's mane is a particular mushroom. Actually, we find it out in the woods and we fry it up and cook it. It's delicious. It looks like a little Santa's beard, right? But this is one of these mushrooms that's absolutely unable to cross the blood-brain barrier. This is also has so many great, wonderful studies on it. Look up the studies that Paul Stamets is doing. It's what's called the Stamets stack. It has an ingredient that I can't talk about here, but it is a combination of lion's mane, niacin, the flush-forming niacin, and another mushroom that I can't talk about. You put those together, and what it does is it gets into the brain and it regrows the brain. So this is lion's mane, and this helps to also feed the brain, regrow the brain. Now, another thing is creatine. Now, creatine, people have been using this for muscles, and as I talked in the previous video, grandma and grandpa, they need to rebuild their muscles in their legs so they don't fall over. That's important. Creatine is very important, but that is at a dosage of 5 grams. So the regular dosage, and back in the day, you would do what's called a loading dose of 20 grams for like 3 to 4 days, or anywhere up to a week, and then bump down to the 5 grams, okay? Well, that 5 grams is what feeds your muscles, right? But the studies show that the brain needs 20 grams. So what that means is instead of 1 scoop, you're going to do 5, 10, 15, 24 scoops of this, because it comes in a little scoop. That's going to give you 20 grams. So if you've got a person that's got Alzheimer's, dementia, brain problems, you're trying to wake the brain up, instead of just doing the 5, you're staying on 20 grams. 20 grams in order to feed the brain, give the muscles enough so that the muscles have enough extra, and then it can go to the brain. So this stack works wonderful, and that would be 5 grams of this. This would be, let me see, the lion's mane. It says 3 capsules of this. This is the standard dose of 4 capsules of the cognotropic. And then the Circuzyme, this is anywhere from 3 to 6 capsules, depending upon how stiff you are. If you're pretty stiff, then you want to actually take more of the nattokinase to kind of break up the stiffness of the fibrin. But in particular, it's the fibrin of the blood vessels, right? So this is a wonderful stack that can actually be used for anywhere that's fully in dementia. They can't even remember that you are their child. They can't remember their name, all the way to, you know, I'm kind of a little fuzzy in my thinking, right? They say that Alzheimer's is not reversed, so the only thing that you can do is halt it. That's not true. I've actually seen cases, I've known personally cases, and in particular with the Stamets stack, I've known cases that were in the nursing home and they couldn't remember their name and they were violent, and now they're back home and they're back working again, right? It actually rebuilds. Now I would say that on top of that is the cognotropic, in particular, rebuilding the BDNF brain factor. And then the other thing that I would say, it's not on the stack, but this is something that's, the brain needs fat. The brain needs fat, right? And it needs an absorbable fat. Now, animal fats are great, and I really think like beef fat and beef tallow is something like that. That's great. But one of the prime fats that the brain really works really well on and is a very good anti-inflammatory fat, that is coconut oil. Now, you could even go the step of what's called MCT oil, which is a coconut oil that's been processed in order to really concentrate the MCT, medium chain triglycerides. However, just straight old coconut oil, the good coconut oil that's a solid at room temperature, and if we're trying to regrow the brain or feed the brain, we're talking about anywhere from 3 to 5 tablespoons of that raw a day. And people say, I cook with it. You don't want to cook with it because when you cook at it, you damage it. So one of the great things to do coconut oil, if you don't want to do just a spoonful because I can't stand the taste of it. Some people really love it. You take a tablespoon to 2 tablespoons, you mix it with some, whether it be peanut butter or some nuts, chopped up nuts, and some honey, a little bit of cinnamon, and a little sea salt. And now it's this wonderful frosting that you can put on apple slices, you can put it on celery sticks, or you can just do spoonfuls of it. And it tastes like you're eating a frosting. It is so delicious. You can also then make it into balls and put it in the freezer. And this is what's called fat bombs. The main ingredient of fat bombs is coconut oil. And if you're trying to rebuild the brain in particular, now this is going to help even more so by taking the choline, because that's going to dissolve it so that it can get into the brain even better, right? But it's high fat, high absorbable fat. Fish fat is a good thing. The DHA, the EPA DHA, but like I said, one of my best favorites in terms of really, so that you can do a large amount, is that coconut oil, but it has to be in its raw form. So this is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. And if you want to book an appointment with me, 734-985-5891. I can also do online appointments and do telehealth because I can test people over the phone, over the web, and find out what they need. But that's the kicker, is when you find out what you need, then do it. And so there's lots of different things. Nutrition that really works is what the body is made out of, and this is what helps. And the body, anytime it gets into any kind of problem condition, it's because it's in a detriment. It's because it's in a deficiency. Deficiency was then what becomes a condition, right? So what fixes conditions is fixing the deficiency, giving the body what it needs. So until next time, this is Jason Eagle, your Natural Health Authority. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.